Essay title: Gender inequality is a common theme in ethno-national conflict. Drawing upon empirical cases, how have women been used in conflict zones by adversaries to achieve their political aims/goals? Use examples and cases to substantiate your points. Introduction. Gender inequality is prominent in conflict. War is predominantly a male activity, largely fought by men. Masculinity is often associated with physical strength and aggression, and femininity is often associated with caring and empathy. War enhances the traits associated with masculinity. Soldiers are deemed heroes, which gives rise to the dichotomy between images of the protector male and protected female. These images disguise both the roles women play and gender-based violence during conflict. This essay will briefly discuss the role of women in conflict and conflict resolution and the importance of these roles. It would first discuss how women have been used in the process of conflict resolution in the three key elements of peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peacebuilding within specific countries. It will in turn discuss women in conflict and specifically if rape as a war tactic is effective in achieving specific aims within conflict. Finally, as an overview, it will examine the case of Northern Ireland to see how effective women were used in conflict resolution and how valuable they were in achieving specific aims within conflict. Women used for conflict resolution. As an overview on how women have been used in conflict resolution, this essay will examine empirical cases, specifically women's role in peacekeeping in the Philippines, peacemaking in Somalia, and peacebuilding in Northern Ireland. In the case of the Philippines, after the conflict between the Philippines government and the Moro National Liberation Front, the Mindanao Commission on Women were used as a conflict resolution agency and helped facilitate women being the arbiters of peacekeeping. This can be seen in the Women's Healing Communities Project, which used respected women in the community as mediators to manage violent clan feuds. Women were used to facilitate communication and prevent and reduce conflict. The case gives insight into how women can be used on the ground to ease, reduce, and confine conflict, showing how women can be used effectively as a quasi-key peacing force by actors involved in conflict resolution. As for the case in Somalia, women have met in venues since 1993 to develop a long-term vision of Somalian society. Furthermore, women's NGO groups try to address issues of migration and displacement and create avenues for peace. Also in the region, women have acted to restore schools, create water supplies, and help open inter-clan dialogue on peace. This shows that women have had an integral role in rebuilding from the ground up the societies of conflict-ridden areas. This can be talked about on a foundational level, but also from a psychological level. Trying to bring groups together is not done simply by building schools and water sources. It is done by bringing groups together to first create a dialogue and then reunify that society. The work done in Somalia shows how women have been used to facilitate the peacekeeping side of conflict resolution and also shows the impact that women can have on conflict resolution schemes and processes. Finally, in the case of Northern Ireland, the drafting of the Good Friday Agreement, the Northern Ireland Women's Coalition, NIWC, had representatives in the peacemaking process and were able to include clauses related to human rights, care of the victims, and conflict and provisions for a civic forum. Although this was a small part to play in the overall dialogue in the peace-building process in Northern Ireland, it was shown how women can be used by relative actors to achieve aims in Northern Ireland. It shows how women can be used by relative actors to achieve these aims in conflict resolution, specifically in the instance in which the Women's Committee were used as a buffer between extreme unionists and Republicans. These three examples from conflict zones demonstrate that women have a fundamental role to play in the conflict resolution process, and it is not just a symbolic role. However, following on from this, women in conflict. I will now examine how women are used in conflict. A minority of women soldiers are directly involved in conflict. According to Chinkin and Kaldor 2013, there were female fighters in Syria during the war in Bosnia. There were at least 2 women brigades in the Serbian side. Furthermore, 10% of the UK's armed forces are women. Though not yet involved in direct combat, women have been used as suicide bombers, and the Islamic State is actively recruiting women. Gender-based violence and rape of women is prevalent in ethno-national conflicts. McKenna makes the argument that ethnicity is often used as a tool for political hegemony, and that war in this context is just an instrument of genocide. When genocide becomes part of the way one group tries to achieve its aims, women are often involved. McKinnon refers to Muslims and Croatian women and girls being raped by Serbian military men. The mass rape is part of a campaign by Serbia against non-Serbia, according to McKinnon. Furthermore, she says, when rape is a genocidal act, it is an act against a people to destroy a people. Rape as a process in genocides can be broken down into 2 key areas: destroying a community and actual ethnic cleansing. As for destroying the community, the rape is intended to be so vile and explicit that not only is it meant to drive the raped away, but it is meant to shatter an entire community in the process. In Serbia, rape was widespread and deliberately used for ethnic cleansing for the purpose of creating one race. Babies conceived in the rape of Muslim and Croatian women are regarded as Serbian babies. The children are regarded by the aggressors as somehow clean and purified, as cleansed ethnically, according to McKenna in 2006. Furthermore, rape as an instrument of ethnic cleansing is used to kill off a group. How this is done usually is done by the spread of HIV within certain communities. In order to destroy, rape being used in this way can be seen in many conflicts, such as in Bosnia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Rwanda. Just in the case of Rwanda alone, 17% of women who were raped during the time of conflict contracted HIV, according to UNHCR in 2004. Due to the nature of these conflicts taking place, usually in developing countries, and specifically because those who are raped are often in the minority, many die due to having limited supply of medical supplies, and those who take longer to die spread these diseases within their families to their partners and their children, as in future children, of course, which further perpetuate the impact. Costello 2018. Rape as a tactic of war has strong impact on the role of women in conflict in terms of how they are used in achieving specific objectives for groups, being able to destroy families and communities both mentally and physically, and can greatly benefit adversarial groups, which is why women have been used in conflict zones and is quite prevalent. Women's role in Northern Ireland in both conflict and conflict resolution. Following on from specific tactics used on women in foreign ethno-national conflict, this essay will examine women's role in conflict zones nearer to home, specifically in the case of Northern Ireland. In context, Pickering and Third, 2003, make the argument that the IRA disrupted the British state's political hegemony in Northern Ireland, and that disruption in terms of violence or terrorism became a part of everyday life for the Irish nationalist in the region. According to Henry Lefebvre, 2003, everyday life weighs heaviest on women, and as such the British state believed politically active Irish women who were central figures in domestic home life were playing a key role in the reproduction of terrorist values in the home. The British, to deal with their problem of political hegemony, would have to deal with the role of women in the state. They would have to domesticate these women in the hope of disrupting the domestic reproduction of terrorism. That was taking place. The British state targeted women who were, quote-unquote, political activists or were linked to political activists, according to Pickering and Third, 2003. They interrogated them under emergency legislation and put the women under intense degradation of their personal lives, sexuality, and family roles, Pickering 2002. The interrogation was routine in Northern Ireland, but was used mostly for intelligence gathering and harassment of these women, rather than to pursue prosecutions, according to Liberty 1992. However, Those who were convicted under the emergency legislation reported experiencing violence and sexual violence while being interrogated. Women struggled to maintain control over their identity, biography, and bodily integrity, according to Pickering 2001. In inciting this gender violence, the British state was successful in being able to use women to their ends to domesticate the war, Pickering in 2003 state. This example shows that women's role in conflict is as important to a developed state as a developing one. Although one could argue it does not share the brutality of other states' conflicts in which rape is used as a weapon. However, violence and sexual violence were still reported, and malicious interrogation tactics were used by the British against women who were adversaries to them, showing again how women are quite vital in their value within conflict and how they can be used to reach certain aims. This essay will now examine how women were used for conflict resolution in Northern Ireland. However, according to McCavey 2009, women and their opinions were left out of the bargaining process, and due to this exclusion, women not only objected to agreements, but tried to prevent their implementation. The start of this essay discussed the Northern Irish Women's Committee contribution to the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. However, McCavey argues it served more as a buffer between Unionists and Republicans, rather than as getting women's true input or contribution into the peace process in any meaningful way. It could be seen as a poor strategic move by the British to not include women in the peace resolution process, if peace was really on the agenda. By excluding most, if not all, women's input, McCavey makes the claim that the absence of combative women at the bargaining table, as the Northern Ireland conflict demonstrates, risks the negotiation and unrepresentative and untenable agreements. The British state didn't use women in conflict resolution to the same degree they used them in conflict itself, and because they alienated many women from the process, it actually had a negative effect on the success of much of the conflict resolution process in Northern Ireland. This leads me to summarize women are not used to the same extent in conflict resolution as they are in conflict itself, at least within foreign states. Conclusion. In conclusion, following on from the last statement, it can be still argued that women have a much more integral role in conflict resolution as they do in conflict. But perhaps if more women were involved in all levels of conflict, from leadership to direct combat, feminine characteristics such as empathy could decrease the sexual violence and rape that is used as a tactic in conflict. It would not be possible for women soldiers to impregnate civilians as a means of ethnic cleansing. This essay given examples of how women were used to be effective in peacekeeping in the Philippines, peacemaking in Somalia, and how some successes in the peace-building process in Northern Ireland. However, in comparison to how women are used in conflict as a tactic, their role in conflict resolution is not given the same seriousness. The work done in Somalia shows how women can be used to facilitate the peacemaking side of conflict resolution, and also shows the impact they can have on conflict resolution schemes and processes. Including more women without playing too much to gender stereotypes in humanitarian activities provides basic necessities across the divides by bringing groups together to first create a dialogue and trying to stop violence by working on proposals for peace is vital. This essay argues that women do have as much a role to play in both conflict resolution as in conflict. Historically, actors within conflict and conflict resolution have not included women effectively, as can be seen in the case of Northern Ireland particularly. This could be why actors find it much easier to reach their aims within conflict, but not in conflict resolution, due to the absence of women's serious contribution in the latter. Thank you.